Okay, it's been about 5 months since we built our well house, and the well house is the first actual building I have ever built. I've built a lot of uh, furniture, cabinet work, stuff like that, but I had never actually built anything. And two reasons we wanted to get this well house built: one, obviously to protect the well, and two is we have this shed over here that we wanted to build. We live in Horry County, South Carolina, and Horry County is where Myrtle Beach is located, although it's not where we're at. And we're allowed to, even though we're in a hurricane zone, build up to 200 square feet of storage space and not get a permit. And so I wanted to build that, but I wanted to do a trial run, which is all right. I'll get into the tan blob in a second, but the first thing we would have done differently is that this is exterior grade T111, which the T111 is where you have these grooves here. Typically T111 is you have 11 inches of flat and 1 inch of the recessed. This is a different version. At the time this was cheaper, but let me run over to the shed real quick and I'll show you what that system is, because this is just regular plywood that was unfinished with the T111 finish on the outside. All right, while we're walking over here, the guys are in their fenced in area, which of course half acre is not good enough for him. Sherlock's upset because he's not over with me, but he can live with it. Okay, here's a closer up of our shed. No, the shed has not been painted yet, and yes, we're supposed to paint it. I had caulked it a little while ago, but it had been too cold to paint, and then when it got warm enough to paint, we got too busy with our work, so it's just sitting here, hadn't been painted yet. So that's on our overall master to-do list. Okay, if you look at the walls here, this is the door, but the walls are the same thing. And first of all, this is an OSB version of the T111. If you buy a pre-built shed that they come delivered at on back of a truck or something, this is what they use. This is 3/8 inch OSB, where you have the nice wood grain surface on the outside, and on the inside it just looks like regular OSB. OSB is a very strong sheathing material. It can be arguably better than plywood. Just depends on who you talk to. Now, the other good thing about this comes pre-primed. And when we go back over to the well house, I'll tell you why that is so important. Because the sheathing that we used on the well house was not primed. And then while we're over here, the other thing is, now one, these doors are a lot bigger, but I framed out the doors with 1x6s on the outside and 1x4s on the inside. Reason they're 1x4s on the inside is I wanted to cheap out and save a little money. So it's, I don't know, it probably saved me, now that I think about it, probably maybe 20 bucks. So was that the best decision in the world? I don't know, but that's what I did, and that's why I did it. But if you look at this, we not only have our little 3/8 inch OSB piece here, but we also have a 3/4 inch piece on the inside and outside, sandwiching this together. So even though this door is a full 4x8 piece, it is able to stay pretty much in shape. Where on the well house, when I go back over there, it was done differently. As I'm walking back, of course the guys have to follow me. And Sherlock, of course, is the channel mascot, and then Lady is the channel mascot in training. So other than the fact I'm on the outside of the fence, they really love the fence. So even though that fence was a pain, I really like the fact that we built the fence. Ain't that right, Sherlock? Okay, coming back to the well house. Like I said before, this was a standard piece of exterior plywood with this T111 type finish on it. Now, this was not primed at all, and it was cheaper at the time. This was $27 a sheet for a 4x8 sheet, where the T111 that we used, which was the OSB on the shed, was $40 a piece. Well, when you add multiple sheets, that adds up. Well, come to find out, when we went to go paint this thing soaked up paint like there was no tomorrow. This little itty bitty shed here took almost a gallon of paint, and it took a ton of paint to go through all of this plywood finish that we had here. Painting the trim pieces, that was basically no paint at all, but oh my goodness, that took a lot of paint. So one of the things I would definitely do different is that if you want this T111 look, definitely get the OSB version that's pre-primed, or something that's pre-primed. Doesn't have to be OSB, as long as it's pre-primed. Now, one of the other questions we had is, are the doors some magical size? Answer to that question is no, the doors were not a magical size. When I mean magical, did they need to be a certain size? The short version is I wanted them to be as big as possible. And so what I did is, if you see if I can get a shot in here, if you look here, this is a 2x4 stud with the long side going this way and the short side right here, and then it's the same thing on the other side. So basically it's the door width is the width of the overall structure minus the 3.5 inches on both sides. Now, I was trying to be cost conscious on this building, so I wanted the overall sides, which is this side right here, and I wanted this piece up here, more importantly, to be 48 inches or less, which means that this was a little bit less, and so the doors was a little bit less. I can't honestly remember how wide these doors are. Hold on a second. Okay, I just took a tape measure, and the width of the door from one side to the other is 36 inches, and the height of the door from top to bottom is 36 inches. So each panel is pretty much about 18 by 36. Now, I did not put any type of trim around these doors, and because of that, for some reason this side goes in fine, this side does not. And what I'm thinking is happening is, over time, I think the panel's gonna warp some, and I might have to go back in and put trim in later, but right now I'm gonna be lazy and just leave it alone. So we shall see what happens. Now, before I built this structure, I measured all of my well components, and the tan thing here, this is a thermal insulation to go around the well in the wintertime. This thing is designed to be left outside, where if you had your well and you had it exposed with no building like this, you could have that on there and it would still protect your well top from freezing. And I got it on Amazon. If I can find it, I'll put it in the description. It's supposed to survive a, quote, Colorado winter. We are in subtropical South Carolina, so I think our winter will be a little more mild than a Colorado winter. By a little, I mean a lot. So what I did is I had measured everything in here. The well tank is on the right over here. The well itself is on the left. And then there's some pipes and stuff in here. The outside edge to outside edge of everything above ground was about 30 inches square and about 30 inches high. So I wanted my well house to be bigger. So if I needed to come in here and actually work on it, or somebody work on it, let me zoom out a little bit, there we go, then they would have plenty of room. So there's from the outside edge to outside edge on each side is about, it was like 5.5 to 6 inches, if I remember right, to the base of the stud. So everything was able to be worked around. Now, I chose to not put a footing around this well, and because I did it myself. And so what we had is, we have what they call tent anchors, which are basically their 15-inch long anchor that has a little screw thing at the bottom, and you just slowly but surely just drill the thing into the ground, and then you tied it here. The reason I wanted to do that is, one, I didn't want to disturb anything around the well. Disturbed by meaning going underground. And two is, if at any point they ever needed to work on the well, all it would take is about probably 2 to 4 guys, and I could take out the wire, and we could just lift the thing straight up, set it to the side, they could work on it, and then we could just lift it and put it back. Or at least that's the theory. Because, I mean, this thing is heavy, but it's not, you know, ungodly heavy. And so that's why I wanted to do what I did with that. Now, the other thing I did with this, I did this with the shed too, and I would have done it differently, is, you know, we're in South Carolina and it gets hot here, and we're near the coast, so it gets really humid here. So I wanted to make sure that this thing had plenty of insulation. So what I was showing you here, this is the back and this is the front, and that is completely open. And then on the bottom here, this is also completely open. And the reason I did that on purpose, and the reason I did that is I wanted to make sure that there was enough airflow that this thing would not get like 120, 130 degrees. Because the attics here, even if they have the ventilation per the building code, will still get 120, 130 degrees in the summertime. And I did not want this well building to get that. Hold on a second. All right, sorry about that. Sherlock was actually digging in the yard. So I forgot that it actually freezes here in the wintertime. When I mean freezes, I mean the temperature gets below freezing at night. And so we got into November, and then we had our freeze warnings, and I'm like, oh crap, the well might freeze, or the pressure tank might freeze, or the lines that are above ground might freeze. We really don't have any freezing ground here. Theoretically it's like 6 or 8 inches, but I don't think it's ever frozen that much at any given time, and we've been in Horry County for over 20 years. but above ground I was concerned. That's why we got this insulation blanket to protect the well. So we got the building to protect the well, and then we got the insulation blanket to protect the well from the temperature. Then once we get to past last freeze, which for us is around April 1st, then we'll take the insulation blanket off and leave it off all summer until we get to first freeze again. And so what I would have done differently is I would have built some louver system, and I would not have had the air gaps in here. What I would have done, and unfortunately it'd be too difficult to do it now, is I would have put rigid insulation along all the walls, and I put rigid insulation on the roof, and I would have not had anything open. And then I would have had louvers in there, so in the summertime I could open the louvers up and it could breathe properly and not get too hot. And then in the wintertime I would close the louvers, and then I wouldn't have to have the insulation blanket. So that's just something to consider, is that that I would have definitely done different. Now, we did something similar on the shed, but that shed was never designed to actually be conditioned. Now, the good thing is around Christmas time of 2022, pretty much the entire country got into some version of a deep freeze. And for here, we got down to if you go by the USDA growth chart for plants, we got down to our minimum temperature, which was 15 degrees. One night we got 15, one night we got 16, one night we got 17. And for us, we actually got below freezing temperatures for almost 48 hours. It was like 42 hours. And that never happens around here. Normally it stays freezing for a little while, then it warms back up. You know, we might get a little snow here, but in 4 hours it's gone. So for it actually being below freezing for almost 2 days is actually very unusual. But because we had the insulation blanket and we had the building, the water at the tap never got below 50 degrees. Because I woke up the morning that it got to 15 degrees and I was freaking out that we were going to have busted pipes and all this, and the well was going to get screwed up and everything, but the water never got below 50 degrees. And so the good thing is, as long as you have this well protected with some sort of insulation around it, the water that's under the ground, like this one goes down 250 feet, it takes the water temperature from down there, which obviously is way above freezing, and it cycles it up. And so if you have some sort of insulation around it, it will be able to keep some sort of constant temperature. So at least in our area, it would never be in danger to freeze. Now, since the beginning of the year, Andrea's mother's trailer got moved, and they're the same people that we bought our house from, and they said that when that real bad cold snap hit, they had like 15 to 18 calls of people that did not protect their wells at all. They just had the well exposed outside with the pressure tank exposed, and they froze. And so they were calling, freaking out, saying that our wells froze and all that. And it was a weekend, it was a holiday, and they're like, we're not going to be able to really do anything, and you're going to have to pay weekend and holiday rates in order to get your water again. So of course we got a nice wasp right here. All right, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. It looks like that's what they call a dirt dabbler wasp. These wasps are not aggressive unless of course you piss them off, but these type of wasps, instead of making big wasp nests, they will actually take mud and make little nests that way. And they're just little things, and anybody that's been outside in this area, you'll see them all over the place. But those wasps are typically not aggressive. He's probably making one right now, so let me shut this thing up before he gets back. Hold on a second. Okay, shut the well back up so the wasp comes back, I don't interrupt him. Because like I said, they're fairly agile for a wasp unless you get them mad. Unlike other wasp species that are very aggressive. So I think that's it on the well of things I would do differently. Mainly it's the OSB. On the outside, it would be some sort of insulation and some version of opening and closing to allow airflow into the well. Because in the summertime I would want the airflow, and in the wintertime I wouldn't. And then as far as the roofing is concerned, shingles and metal roofing would be your standard. If you do a shingle roof, you have to do a minimum of 3 and 12 slope, which would be, it's 12 horizontal, 3 up. That's what they call in construction a 3 and 12 slope. That's the minimum slope that would be to warranty the shingles. If you have it less than that, the shingles will not warranty. And so this particular slope here, just like the one on the shed, both of those are 3 and 12. Obviously you can have it higher than that if you want to. If you live in an area that gets a lot of snow, you do not want a shallow roof like this. You would want a steeper roof so the snow would get off the roof. But like I said earlier, we don't get snow here of any significant fashion, so we can have the shallower roof. And let me walk over so we can see the shed. The shed also, let me zoom in a little bit. The shed also has a 3 and 12 slope. Now, there's also things I would do different on that shed, but that's a different video. So I hope this answers some questions, and for me, this was my learning experience project. So I hope, I mean, I learned some things off of this because I learned off of this to build the shed, and then I learned from the shed to build the next thing, and so on and so forth. And I'm gonna go over here and about murder a dog. Those two are just having too much fun digging in my dirt over here. And we do not have grass yet. It's not warm enough to plant the grass yet. The grass that we want to plant requires the soil to be at least, I think, 60 or 65 degrees. And we're still, even though it's warm right now and it's been warm, we still good chance of getting a cold spell. And yeah, these two have been having way too much fun, so that's not encouraging. So, all right, enough about the dogs. This was supposed to be about the well, and so I hope that answers the questions. If there's anything else that anybody would have, just feel free to comment. I'm not able to respond all the time, but I can respond as soon as I can.